We've got 50 in the room, so we'll get this party started. Beautiful June day here, and I'm just as shocked as you are. It's June 1st. But for those who've asked, I don't think Heather will be in today, the Canadian Butt Lady. I think she's busy, and I apologize. Scott Summers in the house as Fatty McButterpants, Sig226, Ella Thea, Cyberdoc, Padre, Lewis Browning, Dan Boyd, Steve G, Kazooie, Trisha. Is that from Kalamazoo, or do you play the kazoo? These things confuse me. 69 Cornet 500 is having a birthday soon. Happy birthday, my friend. Daniel Kester wants me to stay hydrated, and I will be drinking out of a purple Solo cup today. And that is a mere coincidence that it kind of matches my shirt. Easy one. Hello, Steve Lehto. Retired Butcher Boy is in the house, as are many other friends. Tyler Durden, you're too early. No, my friend, it's never too early when you've got 50 people in the room. So we're at 138 now, or a $1.38, as I like to say. Michael Curry, hey, Steve, up in Vermont, cold, no snowfall yet. Oh, it's scary, those places where you can get snow any time of the year, pretty much. I understand, but, American Tours, great to have another live. Vinny Sluga's in the house. Ryan, Dan Boyd, a cat named Kalamazoo. Taekwondo guy, Sensei Lehto. Although isn't that Japanese? Taekwondo's Korean. Not to be too picky here. Hey, you there. Hey, you there. Carl's Corner. Don Lupejkus, or is that Lupakis? That J could be silent. Steve the Hammer Lehto. Okay. Let's get ready to rumble. Somebody said something similar to that at the top of the hour. And of course, that's Bruce Buffer's trademarked phrase. Bob Simmons, I am McNathan. Sometimes I talk to myself is in here as well somewhere. I saw that go by. Elathea's purple is one of her favorite colors. 90 knots, hello from the other OC. Great day for NCAA regional baseball. Is that happening right now, Tyler? James Milano is checking in from Puebla, Mexico. I'm guessing it's close to Wojciech Gabris. I could be mispronouncing it, and I apologize. Checking in from Poland. Is greetings from Poland and asking for the plushy owl to be brought back to the set. I moved the plushy owl because I had to make room for the chicken. But you know something? I should get the plushy owl back, because the plushy owl was, in fact, a low-flying owl. Charles Layton, hello, Steve from Leachville. Roxin, hello, Steve. Diamond Bill, Roll Tide, Alabama, where it's 80. Right now, I got 61 degrees, 61. I was actually mowing the lawn this morning. I had something weird happen for my good friends like Bob and others who know about riding mowers. The belt jumped off my deck so that my blades aren't spinning. And I don't think it broke. I think it just popped off. And so it's a relatively new tractor. I think the belt was replaced a little while ago, but I do beat on that thing. So I got to go out later and see if I can fix that. Kazooie Trish, this is Banjo Kazooie is an old Nintendo 64 game I played when I was much younger. Oh, okay. Never heard of that one, but I'll trust you. M. Colba checking in from Milwaukee. Just Jazzy is checking in from Southeast Michigan. But Southeast Michigan could be Detroit, could be Adrian. Let me know. Robert Torre, I'm here. Don't count me as tardy. Don't be tardy to the party. Chris Tope, Blue Ash, Ohio. Small town girl checking from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Is Fort Wayne a small town, or are you from a smaller town than that? Tim Nossum, talk about a phrase that pays. Let's get ready to rumble. Daniel Kester, my cat's name is Shadow. The Shadow knows. Who knows? Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? Wojciech is nice, man. You spelled it. I pronounced it correctly? That's cool. Ram 50 V8 high, Steve Lehto, sunny and clear and warm in Harrison, Arkansas. Hey, Biff Jones from South Africa. Really enjoy your legal commentaries. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. Wojciech says, I've got the same plushie owl. Somebody just sent it to me. It was from a viewer, and as is much of the stuff on my set. I need a bigger set, but then if I did that, I'd have to back out further to get it all in frame. So Tyler says they've got games going on right now in the NCAA, but the Baton Rouge regional games start at 2 p.m. Central. So that's a few hours down the road from according to my math. Eddie Tobin, Steve, thank you, sir. Prodigal Stranger, good people, I missed my intro. I pray you hear it now. You're watching Lehto's Live. This will all end in tears. I just know it. Now your host, Steve Lehto. It'll End in Tears, of course, is a song by Gene Loves Jezebel, for those who don't know. Obscure song references are a thing of mine, although I try to make them less obscure for the mainstream audience. So I'll usually do a song reference that everyone's going to get, you know. So I mentioned a bunch of times ago, New York, London, Paris, Munich. I hope you know where that was going. Tom Redmond's checking from Hillsdale. Fatty McButterpants doesn't feel tardy, and that's really it. It's more about attitude. Arch Dog, hey, from Pontiac, the channel is growing. Have you ever been to Higgins Lake? Of course I have. I grew up in Michigan. There's Higgins Lake, Houghton Lake, Burt Lake, and Mullet Lake are the big lakes up in that area. But Higgins Lake is a beautiful, beautiful all sports lake. That lake rocks in the summertime. I'm very familiar with Pontiac also. I go to the Woodward Dream Cruise and often hang out in Pontiac or drive through it many, many times. And I grew up in Birmingham, Michigan, so that's right down Woodward from Pontiac. So yes, know Pontiac very, very well. Vinny Sluga's checking from the Rolling Meadows, Illinois. Dan Boyd, Mullet Lake. Yeah, it's named after a guy named Mullet. Before there was the haircut, there was just a guy. Sig226, pop music by M. Everybody's talking about pop music. Quoting Marvin, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Really? It'll end in tears. I thought it was Gene Loves Jezebel because I went and saw Gene Loves Jezebel about a month ago. Peter Mandix just got done mowing the lawn. Or are you done or are you just taking a break? Tyler Durden says, I identify as early. You understand that time is merely a human construct. And whether you're late or early is literally a state of mind. So you can get trouble for somebody else's state of mind. Robert Torres says, I'm in Deer Park, just a couple miles away from Blue Ash. Got to say hi to my friends. It is funny when people find out that there's other people who they might only know from their nicknames. Wait, you live near me? Rick Foley, hi, Steve. Thanks for keeping it live while you could have been at the Detroit Grand Prix. What's funny is it's such a small deal that I didn't know that until recently. I'm like, wait, they still have that thing in Detroit. I'm not a big Grand Prix fan. But a friend of mine contacted me and said, oh, you got to watch some of the local TV coverage. It's horrible. Which I feel bad about because I know some of the people who are involved in that. Kim Jong Corleone. I didn't realize you do live streams. I've been doing them for a while on Sundays at 1 o'clock, Sundays Eastern time. That's Eastern in the United States. I guess it's probably like Monday afternoon someplace else. Mindbend says no more Silverdome with a sad face. Yeah, the Silverdome came down a while ago. If you go where it used to be, there's now an Amazon distribution warehouse there that you can probably see from space. In fact, it's so big, yeah, I think you can probably see it from Mars. But I understand that Mars is in space, but that's a further destination of merely mere space. But the Silverdome was such an odd thing. I remember when they built it. And at first they called it Pontiac Stadium. And people were like, well, what if it rains? So they had to put the word dome in the title. They're not going to call it Pontiac Dome. So they go, okay, the Silver Dome. And they never sold the naming rights for some weird reason because they didn't think of it. And then at one point in time, the Pistons basketball played there. And the Lions from Detroit played there. And it's always funny when they go, the Detroit Lions playing in Pontiac, Michigan. But another story altogether. Josh Hengies, I love your channel. Got your through Vin Wiki. Did the Chrysler turbine car shape modern car manufacturing technology in ways we feel today? Not directly. The turbine technology didn't go very far beyond the Chrysler program that ended in 1988, believe it or not. They did have some pretty cool things they did with the car. The car had some aluminum body panels that were glued, and they apparently did it in a way that the glue wouldn't fail. And a very, very cool car, but no, it's primarily just a memory and a thing in a museum. And also, The idea that they're just cool and there's a few survivors out there. So I've driven 3 of the survivors. Wojciech says, please host X Space where people can speak with you. I don't know what that is. I literally don't know. Is it on this platform or a different platform? I've often thought it'd be kind of cool if people could actually talk, but it could probably also go sideways really fast, if you know what I mean. Tim Nossum, what's in the old Kmart headquarters? Is it still standing? That one I don't know because the Kmart World headquarters was in Troy, Michigan, right next to Somerset Mall, and I actually was inside that building a few occasions, and really really interesting building. I don't remember if it's still there or not. I haven't driven by it and thought of that in a little while. Jenny Seacrest as well. You're on here early. No, 1 o'clock. I always start at 1 o'clock. Mindbend says there's one in a famous car collection. Dave, 49. Hi. Hello, Steve. I enjoy your show. 66 here in Fairfax, Virginia. Trust you are well. Thank you. I am. I'm doing very well. Mustang MG05 says the Washington Redskins, which I think they've changed their name, haven't they? Play in Landover, Maryland. Yeah, I suspect real estate in Washington, D.C. is a little bit more scarce and precious than it is in Detroit, Michigan, but I could be wrong. Wojciech says that would be on the former Twitter. On the former Twitter. Huh. I've never even looked into that. Potato Head, or have people call in. Yeah, but then the thing is, if you don't have call screeners, you're playing phone roulette, which is really dangerous. Ella Thea do a massive Zoom meeting. You know, it's funny. I don't think I've ever been in a Zoom meeting that I set up. I've been in dozens of Zooms, but with courts and publishers and my agent and other people, but I don't think I've ever set up a Zoom meeting that I've actually done. Tyler Durden, have you ever experienced a hurricane? Not one where it actually hit and I was in ground zero, but I was in Florida when one of them passed by not so far away. The one that hit New York City. Was that Sandra? Sandy? I forgot what they called it. And I mean, but just having one go by was a nightmare. But didn't lose power or anything like that. John Michael Karma used to hawk local newspapers in the lobby of the first Kmart in Garden City, Michigan. Yeah, and I think that store's been in the news, and I forgot if they closed it or if it's like the last one's still open. But it's kind of weird the arc of that business. Attention, Kmart shoppers. We went out of business 23 years ago. Please exit the store. Fatty Butterpants. The blue light special. Believe in yourself, says I've set up a Zoom meetings for virtual walkthroughs for real estate. That's interesting. I actually once asked somebody to go look at a house for me, and just while we were talking on the phone, just turn the phone around and walk through like that years ago. Oh, news hodgepodge. Have Canadian robot lady be your call screener. Modern technology, we probably could. The funny thing is, I don't know if anybody's seen the videos. I forgot where they are now, but it's been a while. Yeah, Sandy hit New Jersey back when I was living in New Jersey, Tyler Durden, and that's what I'm talking about. It was also right around the time of the New York City Marathon, and they canceled it. And that's very unusual. Mike Torellis' power was out for 16 days. But I did an interview with the Canadian robot lady, and to make it work as a video, she had recorded at her end, video, and recorded at my end. But we were also doing it where we were speaking, and it was very complicated. And in the video, I've got 2 microphones on the desk. I've got one earpiece in and a headset, which is a wireless telephone or Wi-Fi thing or Bluetooth to my phone. And so we were actually speaking on the phone. We were each recording our thing, but we also had something going. I mean, it was a nightmare, but it worked. It worked. Janie Seagrass, are they still calling it X, formerly known as Twitter, or are they just calling it X now? I know most people is calling it Twitter. I There are some things people won't change. Like, oh, from now on, use this name. No. How about that? Mexican Spec, good morning, all. Tyler Durden says, why not use AI to call the screen the calls? Hey, why not use AI just to make up calls? Oh. Ram 50 V8. I remember buying R12 refrigerant at Kmart for 47 cents a can. Wojciech says, join me there. WGAB 88. I will guide you. Huge fan. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'll look into it, but I'm not really sure. Then he asks a question I can't answer. Tyler Durden, the app formerly known as Twitter. Sig226 says, call it Twix. I think I've seen that, but it's funny. Richard Terhune, does it really matter? Not really, but you know something? Half the stuff we talk about here does not matter. And I'll be the first to admit that. The Prodigal Stranger says, towards the end, I was a Kmart Rewards member. They used to give me a $5 a month just to shop there. Oh, Unk is checking in from West Michigan. Yo. Now, West Michigan, that could be anything. That could be Traverse City. That could be Benton Harbor. It could be Niles. Joel Jensen is camping in the Colorado high country at 8,500 feet. Ty Thompson, hello and good afternoon. Thank you for your content. Bill Krebs says keeping the comments to text form keeps Pandora's box closed. Duncan Campbell, sorry I'm late. How was your Sunday? My Sunday's good. And don't worry about being late. Ash2, Ash81 says Baba Booey, which of course is what happens when you play phone roulette. And if you don't know what we're talking about, listen to Howard Stern and Richard and Sal and their phone pranks where they call up a lot of small market radio stations like the where people call in to buy and sell things. And they will call up with the goofiest phone calls, and sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're annoying, but you know. Mrs. Teresa 1999 is checking in from the Geneva area of New York in the Finger Lakes region. BPD Octavia says, hi, as a Michigander residing in the UK, I love and watch your channel in my free time or to start the day. Now, I have to tell you, I disagree with a Demon and Michigander, but I am in the minority on that one. Unk, I'm in between Niles and Traverse City. That's like saying I'm thinking of a number between 0 and 10. Yes, it's a single digit number. Okay, that doesn't narrow it down. Codemeister Beat says at True Crime Losers channel, we say we're not here for any reason because it was something a detective said in an interview. Ironically, because there probably was a reason, right? Paul, evening all. The Lost Prussian, will you retire to the UP? Oh, I would never retire to the UP. I know people who live up there year round, and the winters are harsh. And so I don't imagine retiring and going someplace full time where the winters are harsh. But that's just me. Buen luck. Steve, thanks for this gift of live chat. The gift of live chat. How about the gift of sound and vision? Tyler Durden, phone roulette or whisper down the line? Aaron, are you still working with MyTV? No, I'm not. Don't get me wrong. The guy who runs the channel is a good friend of mine. My former producer, Jared's a good friend of mine. I just got to the point where I was too busy, and I also had some technical issues I couldn't work out because I moved my studio. And so I'm not working with them now. I talk to them quite often. In fact, I saw Jared 2 weeks ago, hung out with them for a while. And occasionally I'll do things with them for special events. Like, for instance, there's usually a thing in Troy in August called the Troy Traffic Jam. And we often broadcast live from it from MyTV. So I do occasionally work with them, but not that often. I used to have a daily show Monday through Friday on there, and that got to be a real grind. Mark Miller, I thought it was Michiganian. I believe that is true. That is my favorite demonym. Aura Pask says, "Can you tell us your favorite joke?" And the sad part is not really, because I believe I know the joke. When people say, "Steve, tell us what you believe to be the funniest joke you know," and unfortunately, it's dirty. And it can't be cleaned up. So unfortunately, whenever I'm asked for a joke, that's the one that pops into my head. I'll have to think a bit if I know another joke. So Pete GX, mountain bike season starting here in Northern California. Are you pro or anti e-bikes on trails? You know something, I'm not hugely in favor of them, but if they're allowed, as long as they're courteous, I've got no problem with them. So I mean, I've been on trails before where somebody 10 times better than me comes blasting by me, and as long as they announce themselves, I'm fine. So the only difference here is that someone who's lazy can still pass me, but as long as they're courteous about it, I don't have a problem with it. So George says it's Michiganian Yander in there. Unk, I like Michigangster. Now that's good. That's good. Aaron, I'm a Michiganite. Tyler Durden, do they salt the roads in Michigan? Ask any car. Yes, they salt liberally. And by that, I mean they use tons of salt. And you'll see some vehicles in a road, especially you go halfway up like mid Michigan here, where it's real ugly, and they use a lot of salt. You'll see vehicles that don't have wheel wells, they don't have fenders, they don't have quarter panels. It's amazing they're still on the road at all. Wojciech again says, "I'm tipping a dude on the camera. Have a good day." And thank you for checking, my friend, because I'm guessing where you are, it's probably early evening, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or is it later than that? But I appreciate you checking. I love to hear from people around the world because I am fascinated. I am fascinated by the way the internet works. So there you go. I'm going to take my watch off. I keep bumping it on stuff. Stagecraft Productions says, "How about a syndication into an internet 24-hour television? We need a show like yours. Please respond." To do what? Like play my videos on the channel, or for me to be live on the channel? Because if I'm live on the channel, it takes up more of my time. And if it's to play my videos on the channel, people can already see my videos on YouTube. I'm not quite sure how that works. So MH08 says, "When you're retired, you don't have to start and clean up the car. You can just sip the morning coffee and watch the snow." Or you could have a garage. Strat. I could retire in Sheboygan, Michigan, but it's too damn cold. Sheboygan's beautiful, though. Sheboygan is beautiful. That whole area up there is beautiful. But you're right, it can get rough in the wintertime. Norm McDonald says, "The best gambler I ever met never placed a bet." Diana C. I miss Norm. I was actually talking to my brother. I've got a brother who's a big Norm fan. Occasionally, we just go off these long tangents of repeating our favorite Norm jokes. Oh boy, it jumped on me again. What are you going to do? News hodgepodge. I had a Dodge Omni minivan. Love the plastic body. Really? Plastic body panels. I know they've had those in cars for a while. It depends on the vehicles, and so some of them, like that's the unusual thing about like a Fiero, a Pontiac Fiero. You see them today, and the bodies actually look pretty good because they're not rusting. Zafar Sayed, undercarriage car washes are important in the Midwest. K Gar, if you're buying a used car and see it's from Michigan, stay clear. Well, if you're buying it sight unseen, yeah. But I'm gonna tell you right now, when I go to buy a used car, I will not buy it until I'm on my belly like a reptile climbing underneath it because I want to look at the underside of the car. Car could be in Michigan but brought in from someplace else, or you could be in a state that doesn't salt. Nowadays, cars are moving all around like that. Dan Boyd, cars from Chicago are a special kind of deteriorated. Daniel Player, 300 in the room and only 90 likes. Come on, y'all. Alethea, a live marathon for charity. Um, so many charities out there. Do they really need my help? Mark Miller says, I forget, but they use some type of chemical instead of salt here in Colorado. Um, oh, we've just got good news. Hang on. Yes, I'm consulting my phone. I just got a note from the Canadian robot lady. She'll be here in a bit. She'll be here in a bit. Bob blah blah has a legal question. Please explain how class action suits get started and how a lawyer gets picked. More often than not, it's a lawyer who finds a case that looks like a class action. He files the action and then says, I want to get it certified as a class. If several other people get involved, including other attorneys, a court will pick who gets to be the lead plaintiff or lead counsel, excuse me. I've handled class actions before. What happens is someone comes to my office, they tell me a story, they show me they've got a case, and I go, but wait, there's all these other people just like you, similarly situated. And they go, yeah, I guess you're right. And so let's do it as a class. And we file it up as a class. So the class action is filed as an individual action with class allegations. You later bring a motion to have it certified. And at the certification motion, there might also be a motion for other attorneys who want to get involved. More often than not, the attorneys will kind of agree to work together and share the load because quite often class actions will take a lot of work. So Wojciech is not sure if it's appropriate to tip a man, but then again, he did ask me to bring the owl back. So I understand, my friend. No one thinks any less of you. Pete GX. Hey, that's my lucky stabbing hat. My favorite Norm joke of all time, and I'm not going to be able to get it quite right, but I'll paraphrase it, was when he got fired from Saturday Night Live, and a couple years later, they invited him back to host. And during his opening monologue, he came out and he said, it's interesting that I'm hosting this show right now, and yet a few years ago, they fired me because they said I'm not funny. And so I'm here to tell you something that they generally hire hosts who are funny. And I haven't gotten any funnier. Meaning that the show has gotten less funny since he left. So it was a thinky joke. I like that. Chip Levan, is there a minimum to be a class? This is turning into one of my classes at law school. Class actions, generally speaking, do not have bright line numbers on something like that. But what the court will look at is we've got a bunch of class members. Which would be more efficient and equitable for everybody? Would it be better to try these all as individuals or try them as a class? And there's 5 or 6 other things they look at, but I once had a class action where I had dozens of people who said, I want to file a lawsuit if this is not certified as a class. So I go into court and I say, look, here's what we're going to do. We get this certified as a class, or we got to certify this as a class, or I'm going to have clients to start filing actions. I've got all these clients. And I've actually had a defendant go, no, certify the class. Oh, boy. Kelso Cortez says, remember Norm Macdonald, Courtney Thorne Smith? Oh, yeah, that is one of the great clips. They played that quite a bit when he passed away. And they were ripping, in essence, on the movie that Courtney Thorne Smith had just made with Carrot Top. Oh, boy. Not sunk yet. Why is the term class used and not say group? That's interesting because those would be synonyms, right? But in reality, it is a class of people that contains common characteristics. So we're not talking about class like the rich class, upper class, middle class. We're talking about the class of people that, for instance, all bought this particular make, model, and year of car and live in the 48 states or whatever, something like that. Okay, Wojciech, I understand and I got that. But the question is, I'm starting to wonder now how much a PLN 10 is in American money. My phone won't tell me. Hang on. My phone's acting up. Don't know why. Hang on. Ah, never mind. Can't do it. Can't do it. Brett7284. Are there any more guest DJ appearances in your future? I would love to do them. But the sad part is, okay, Tom says the 10 PLN equals $2.67, as also confirmed by M. Colbus. Thank you very much. I've offered to do them, but it's weird. Radio stations pay disc jockeys such little money that the idea of saving that money doesn't occur to them to be worthwhile because I do them for free. And I got one place, WLLW, which, by the way, I am using their mouse pad as the place where I'm putting my microphone. But I'd love to do one, but I have not gotten any more offers. So John Michael Karma says lemon laws are disparaging to lemons. Many people don't know this, but the term lemon to mean something that's not good came from, believe it or not, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, a baseball player who got traded in the early 1900s, and a newspaper writer said this could turn out to be a lemon. And they believe that's the first use of it in print. Now, they could always find earlier uses, but a lemon, as you might guess, is a bright fruit. But if you were to bite into it, it might surprise you. And so that's the thinking, is that upon first impression, then it's second impression. There you go. NS Geeks, as George Carlin once said, I saw a guy with a T-shirt that said "Lead forward, get out of the way." My own option is I obstruct. Oh. Yeah, lemon in other contexts, like lemon cake frosting, says Dan Boyd. But of course, people understand flavoring. It's a different thing. MH says I have 500,000 rupias, worth about 25 cents. Tim Nossman, love to hear a Steve Lehto show spinning his favorite new wave and punk vinyl from the 80s. There wouldn't be a lot of punk in there, but there'd be a lot of new wave or post punk, depends on what you call it. But Fatty Butterpants, I want to see the CRL on the Sunday Live show with you someday. Yeah, I know there's technology out there to make these things happen, but I'm still so lazy. I don't. If it won't operate on my Palm Pilot, I don't think I can do it. Sig 226. How about a 10 trillion Zimbabwe dollar bill? Yeah, at that point, you've got to like remonify somehow, like to change what you're using as a monetary unit, because when you have to start doing higher math, and I'm talking about just numbers with too many zeros. Tom, why is go south a negative? That's interesting. The same reason for everything to go sideways. Sometimes you want to go sideways, and occasionally you want to go south, especially if you're in the wintertime in Michigan, right? So Pete GX checks in. Thank you very much, my friend. Chuck Whitehead, how does a company stay in business after class action? Many of them settle the class actions in a way that is good for their business, and it beats being sued by all those individual people, depending on what it is. Jason Brindamar, hey, Steve friends, I'm late. My bad. Better late than never. And hit the like button in case you forget about that before the show is over. Well, I appreciate that. We're at 333 people, 333. Not sunk yet, says class denotes the parties are being schooled, not so much getting justice. Well, and people complain about class actions all the time. And I understand all the arguments, but you got to understand one thing. Look at one of these class actions. They ripped off 1 million people for 37 cents each. Okay. And so they're going to file, right? Were you going to file a lawsuit and get your 37 cents back? Probably not. So if somebody's doing something about it, why not? But I've also seen some where they're really sad, where they give the class members something that's so illusory that I can't believe anybody approved it. But Codemeister Beat says there's that whole phenomenon in language where things all seem to have negative and positive connotations, like someone being left-handed to mean they're shady. I've never heard that being used as an insult, but of course, there are occasions where the term left can be. I'm trying to think of examples, but uh, you know, uh, it was like Malcolm X talking about all the different names they had for black people, and if you go and look up half those words in the dictionary, other meanings or connotations were negative. So Aaron Freeman, the elevator operator, wanted to ride a trolley, but the whole thing went sideways. And remember, sideways is the perspective from a person over here. It's going the correct direction for people who are on the trolley. Hey, Greg pointed out there was lag. Thank you, my friend. Greg, of course, is my technical guru. I knew there was a lag, but I didn't want to call it out because not everyone would necessarily see the lag. But I also know that if it gets called out, then I'm going to get a whole bunch of there was lag, there was lag, there was lag. But I'm not ripping on you for that. I'm just letting you know I saw it too. Jay points out that okay, I'm not sure it's coined during the Van Buren presidential campaign. I believe it predated it, but was popularized by it. And there was this really weird, and it sounds so strange to us today, but people in the old days didn't have the internet, okay? So to them, entertainment was often kind of, where people would say things that were goofy and then use goofy abbreviations. And if something was all right, they'd say it was all correct. OLLKO. And it'd be like, what? Okay. But they shortened it to okay. And if you were hip, you knew that okay meant something was all right. Okay. But okay is so easy to say. Okay. It's one of the easiest things for humans to say. It's now used universally. And by that, I mean around the world. The universe of people we know who can speak any language. And but Van Buren did actually have the nickname Old Kinderhook, and that was something he popularized. But again, they think it predated him by a little bit. Anyways, Trisha Arnold is listening and lurking. Listening and lurking. I saw a couple other people go by I meant to say hello to, and I feel so bad when I see that. I know Roxanne was in the house at one point in time. There we go, Roxanne. Thank you. I'll make sure I said hello to you. And Sarah C. I want to make sure I said hello to you too. I hadn't seen you in a little while, so I appreciate that. Brandon Links as being left-handed is sinister. I've heard that before. And Brian Ellis says sinister literally comes from the Latin from left. So NS Geek, have you ever done a lemon law case for a vehicle that wasn't a road vehicle, like a tractor or a race car? Yes, yes. But those don't qualify in Michigan as lemons, but there's other laws. I've handled construction equipment. I've handled um, boats and RVs that go on the road, obviously. I've also handled, and I don't do those anymore for a lot of reasons. Um, Never done a race car, but I have done tractors and things of that nature. Greg Lehto says, I have to say I'm impressed with the quality, knowing what your connection is. Yeah, I got a connection that's one step above two Dixie cups and a piece of kite string. Okay. Oh boy. K Gar, since you have a Palm Pilot, have you thought about updating the BlackBerry? I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna I'm gonna wait till the Blackberries come down more in price. I actually still have a BlackBerry. I was digging through a cabinet the other day and I pull open a drawer and my BlackBerry's in there. And I'm like, whoa, because I almost always get rid of my old phones. So what good are they? And I think I saved it because I thought the keyboard was cool. So, hey, Steve, what's the best car show you've been to? AMZ. That's a toss up. And the reason I'm telling you this is that I've been to several of the winged car conventions in Alabama. They have them every 5 years. I've been to two of them at least. And at each one of those events, there will be a couple hundred winged cars, a couple hundred winged cars. And so if you go to like the Woodward Dream Cruise, you might see five wing cars, four, and to see a couple hundred all in one place. It's like, what? So that's been my favorite. The Dream Cruise is always good too, though. John F. Kennedy's checking from Cincinnati. I appreciate that. Daniel Kester ever done any lawsuits on airplanes? No. The amazing thing about airplanes is the way they're maintained. You see old ones that are still being used over and over again. And you know, and I understand there's more to it than that. I understand that. I'm simply pointing out that you'll see somebody talking about their plane. It's like, yeah, it's 1968, but it's been inspected so often, rebuilt so often, kept in shape, and all blah 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 blah. So Shaft says in Michigan, why, when you use a manufacturer's discount code, do you cannot use a lemon law? You can. There's a few more hoops to jump through. But believe it or not, in like the A plan, no, the General Motors employee discount documents state right in there that you cannot bring a lawsuit in court unless you meet certain requirements. But you're still allowed to arbitrate, and you still have the rights under the law. It's a question of whether you can sue them or arbitrate it. But CyberDocs' research in motion, which made the BlackBerry, used to throw the phones into the wall during training sessions to demonstrate durability. Those things were durable, and I still, I understand. I still like the mechanical keyboard. Now I know that you get more screen by getting rid of it, but oh my gosh, those keyboards were cool. And I remember running races like marathons. When you're 20 miles into a marathon, how much easier it is to type with a BlackBerry than a Windows phone. So Jupe Turwin says Padre. I like Okie Dokie also. And Okie Dokie would be another example of a slang saying or slang phrase being even more slangified, if that's a word, which it isn't. Bob Blah Blah says 45102 Amelia rules. I think we're talking about zip codes now in Ohio, right? Prodigal Stranger's never been to Cincinnati. I've been there. I've driven through it. I've got friends there. Blah 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 is not far, but I've been there, and there's that really cool bridge on I-75 that I've driven across a couple times. So, News Hodgepodge says airplanes are like pilots. Eventually, they get too old to fly safely. How do they're maintained well, right? So, Sarah sees the BlackBerry keyboard was the only redeeming factor. That and a little blue light that let you know you had emails. Oh, prodigal stranger, radio, radio. So let's see. We got some zip codes here: 45415 and 45220. Yeah, Daniel Kester says a lot of the planes, like the Cessnas and Pipers today that are flying, were built in the 1960s. Jay Klein in 45244. DePaul says Google Maps doesn't display well on a BlackBerry. I'm joking about the BlackBerry. I haven't had a BlackBerry now, and I don't know when do those things go away. Pre-smartphone. I had a bunch of the StarTAC flip phones. Those were cool. Those are just cool looking. And then of course I had a few other oddball ones in there. And I remember the StarTAC flip phone, the BlackBerry, and then the smartphones that I've had ever since. So Aaron says I was on that bridge in Cincinnati in a Greyhound bus that got cut off by a semi. We all thought we were going over. Ever seen the movie The Mothman Prophecy? That'll make you think twice about being on a bridge. But by the way, I love that movie. I love that movie. Again, if you go watch it now because I said that and you don't like it, don't come back and hey, your taste in movies is horrible. I'm not here, and I don't think you are either for movie recommendations. I'm just mentioning it. So blah blah blah. Home of the Camaro and the twin drive-in. LFT's flip phones are back, baby. Remember the StarTAC? The StarTAC was so cool. It was just such a cool little phone. I mean, the designers who put it together, they deserve to be in like the Museum of Modern Art or something. They really do. Cyberdoc Mothman Prophecies was awesome. I'm not even sure how it was that I found that movie. I don't remember seeing it when it came out. I saw it later. Mark Miller, I have a question. What's the difference between a city, a town, and a township in Michigan? Just mere definitions that come from statutes. And so the Constitution of the state of Michigan says that there shall be different designations for places. And the legislature then passed laws to define these things. And I'm pretty certain that as you move up in size, you're required to have more management and more responsibility, and that usually takes more money. So a lot of people who are in townships don't want to be in a town or a village, and people in a village don't want to be in a city, But every now and then, an area expands to the point where they're like, "Well, we don't have the infrastructure in place unless we become this." So, Nate Jenkins says my last BlackBerry was the first without the mechanical keyboard in 2012. It was that long ago? Wow. So I'm guessing my last BlackBerry was right around 2012 also, because I'd used one for a few years and then decided to move over to a smartphone. Pretty sure that's what happened there. Bill says the biggest thing people do to older aircraft is install updated instrumentation. Yeah, that's the big thing, is the electronics have come a long way. The stuff that used to cost a fortune on airplanes nowadays doesn't cost that much. Jason Brindamar, I forgot to write down your metal detector brand recommendation and the brand you mentioned not to buy. Can you repeat once again, please? Well, I was using a Whites. I still use a Whites V3i, but Whites went out of business. And then Whites sold off all their stuff to, I believe, Fisher. So Fisher Electronics is a good company. Garrett is good. And if you can find a used Whites, they're very good. MindLab is the company I joke about. They're out of Australia. They're kind of expensive and they're kind of heavy, but I know people who swear by them. But there used to be a big fight in this field where those two, it was like being from the University of Michigan or being from Ohio State. They just didn't mix well. And so, but I use a White's V3i, and I love that thing. So Padre had a star attack. So to believe in yourself. Dustin Carpenter says township is an unincorporated area. Yeah. So what happens is, and Bob blah blah says it also hinges on population numbers. Yeah, I think that like I said, you can go look up the definitions on it, and but I've heard of areas that fight because there's enough people in an area where they could become a city if they wanted to, and a lot of people go, no, we don't want to become a city because they're scared their taxes are going to go up. But then people go, but we're not getting the services we need, despite the fact that we have the population density that requires such and such. So, anyway, Dan Boyd, Lewis Rossman's cat is named Blackberry. That's pretty good. Yeah, and Jay Klein, I'm not sure what happens in Ohio. Anderson Township is incorporated because you'll often see signs when you're driving along. It goes, "You are now entering an unincorporated blah blah blah," and the legal distinction must mean something. Otherwise, why put up a sign? So, Believe in Yourself points out that we built this city on rock and roll. Often touted as one of the worst rock and roll songs of all time. Richard Terhune just bought a Minelab Vanquish 440. Metal detector works really well. I'm not familiar with the different names of the Minelabs anymore. I knew some people who had Minelab Explorers back in the day, which were pretty good. But the real thing about metal detectors is you want to get one that gives you a lot of information from what it sends and receives. And nowadays, the modern processors allow them to do so much. So they actually have multi-frequency detectors. Several companies have got them. The White's V3i is, in essence, broadcasting on 3 frequencies simultaneously and then measuring the reflections that come back from those 3 frequencies. And of course, the reflections come back differently based on what metals they're hitting. And it's a long story, but it processes all this information and puts up on the screen what it thinks it's over. And so the multi-frequency detectors are what you want to get if you can afford one. Dustin Carpenter, you always get developments just outside the borders of an incorporated town or city that later get annexed. Yeah, and so for instance, in Flint, I worked for a while at the radio station CK 105, WWCK FM. And they moved their studio in the 1990s to a building in Mundy Township, literally right across the border from Flint. And the primary reason they did that is that Flint had a city tax. And when I worked, I remember getting a paycheck and it goes, deductions. And, you got your FICA and you got your this, you got that, and it would go Flint city tax. It wasn't much, but it was annoying. But I mean, I taught at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law, and likewise, they have a city tax also. And so I had to file 3 tax returns to file one in the city of Detroit. Kelly Kincaid says in Indiana, every county is subdivided into townships, and every part of the state is in one county and one township in that county. Townships in Indiana do small claims court. Are there any situations, though, where the town is cut by a border? Because in Michigan, we've actually got the town of Memphis, Michigan. Memphis, Michigan. And the county line runs right down the middle of the middle of the town. And I actually represented somebody once who filed an action who lived in Memphis and they filed it in the wrong county. And the court didn't catch it because they didn't look at the address. They just, oh, Memphis. Yeah, that's probably right. NS Geek, any Canadian bands on your hit list? Tragically Hip, Gordon Lightfoot, Trooper. We've talked about this before. Strange Advance. Concan. Not the legal requirement, but the band Concan. There's a few others also, but I'll be honest. Honeymoon Suite. Uh, Stampeders. See, now I can't stop. No, I never got the Tragically Hip. I had people raving about them. I go, give me a song, and I listen to it, and I go, you know, okay. I just never quite got that. I'm of course familiar with Gordon Lightfoot. He had a bunch of hits in America just on his own, but also the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I of course know of Trooper as well. So CyberDoc, we need handheld lidar detectors so we can get underground messages. I see underground images. The problem is if you go over a coin and it goes, it's a penny. Does that really help you? I mean, I don't think you can get accurate enough to be able to read the penny, but a metal detector will tell you if it's a zinc penny or a copper penny. And based on the depth, you know what you're doing, you know what kind of penny it most likely is. Hale 9000 points out East St. Louis is in Illinois. Old McDonald Has a Car wasn't Prism a Canadian group as well? I believe so. That rings a bell. Beige Praxis Aesthetic Dad, can I FOIA the library footage? I haven't looked at the FOIA laws in Michigan, assuming you're talking about Redford, Michigan. But if it's considered to be a government generated document, you probably can. You have to pay copying costs or something. Oh, yeah. Aaron Freeman points out that Budapest is actually two cities. And I've had several people tell me that. And basically, doesn't the Danube runs right between them? But everybody calls it Budapest. Budapest. But it's actually Buda and Pest. Budapest is easier. CyberDoc, it's unadvisable to go metal detecting in a graveyard. I actually know people who do that, and it's just so tasteless. So you go out there to visit a grave of one of your ancestors, and some idiot digging holes nearby, digging in a graveyard. No, I would say that is uncouth, and do not do that, or inadvisable, as CyberDoc points out. Kelly Kincaid says also some Indiana counties have consolidated courts. I went to law school in Bloomington, and the court system there is a consolidated court system, which not every Indiana county has. Well, in Detroit, for instance, there's a couple oddities. There is Recorder's Court, which is an archaic court, but it still exists. And then the Grosse Points have magistrate courts. And so it's really strange if you want to file a lawsuit against somebody in one of the Grosse Points above a certain limit, it goes to the circuit court, despite the fact it's below the circuit court limit. And there's actually a court rule that points out that the limit to get into circuit court is this. And there's someplace else that goes, however, if you are in a place that does not allow that in their local court, then you bring it here. And I actually once had to do that. And I remember a judge looking at me going, you can't bring that here. And I'm like, magistrate's court out of Grosse Pointe. Oh, I'm sorry. So there you go. Jupe Turwin is going for a coffee at my neighbor's. Have a good time, my friend. John Michael Karma used to live in Redford. Now in rural Arkansas. It's quite a hike. I've got relatives in Redford. I actually have good friends who are in Redford too. Tom, why don't they build metal detector loops into the soles of shoes? I assume you're joking. There actually was a company that made as a novelty shoes that had metal detectors built into them. Believe it or not, I remember seeing it in some kind of toy advertisement or something. But yeah, so there you go. Beige Praxis Aesthetic Dad went to Trinity Emergency Room in Livonia. Okay. Richard Terhune, is metal detecting in a graveyard even legal? Well, you have to understand that metal detecting is an activity that involves me walking around, swinging a coil over the ground and not doing anything. Then when I find a target, I put the detector down and I dig a little hole. And most places don't actually have laws against metal detecting or even digging little holes if you fill them in. And I've had a police officer walk up to me before and walk up to me and start watching me. And I've stood there and said, do you have a question? And I've had an officer go, no, I'm just watching what you're doing. I said, okay. And I keep going. And if you're good, you can dig a hole, pop it open, get the target out, put the hole back in, tamp it down, and you can't tell. It doesn't hurt anything. I literally, at a house I lived in a couple years ago, dug hundreds and hundreds of targets in my yard. And the next spring, you couldn't find a single one of them. You couldn't. And so I had an officer follow me for a while, and I was curious. I go, what are you doing? And he goes, well, we had somebody ask, is what he's doing legal? And he goes, so I thought to myself, well, there's no law against it. I'm going to come over and watch what you're doing. And he goes, but this is pretty cool, because he saw me find some cool stuff. And I just happened to have the book of coins in my car of all the cool coins I've found. I go, do you want to see some of the cooler stuff I found? He goes, yeah. Go over to my car, pull the book out. I was showing. He's like, this is so cool. And I'd see the guy in town and wave, and but it was nice. So, Daniel Kester, have you found a meteor yet? No, I haven't. I know guys who look for those. I'm not even sure what they'd register on my detector. And they're so odd that to go looking for one, you'd have to know that one actually struck or something. So, Cyberdoc, so backhoe on a beach with your metal detector would not be cool. Well, if it's your beach. Jason Brindamar recommended small hand shovel for detecting. There is a device called a Lesch digger, Lesche, made by a company. It was invented by a guy named George Lesch. And that's my favorite digging tool. And I'm going to see if I can get you a picture of one here. Yeah, see, now my phone's working fine. Remember earlier it wouldn't? I typed in Lesch digging tool, and I got, so hang on. It looks like a knife, but you got to realize that that's angled so that right there's a better shot of it. But you see how it's got the thing? And so what you do is you pinpoint your target. Let's suppose you're looking for coins. You pinpoint your target. Your target's 4 inches down, okay? So imagine an area around the target that's like the size of, I don't know, the hole on a golf course or something. And you come back here and you put the tool down, and the lash has got jagged teeth on one side. And you go like this, and you create a half circle. And then you can either use your hand or the digging tool, depending on how confident you are. And you pop the semicircle over. And then you use a pinpointer to see if you got it or not. And then you pop it back in. And if you don't tear off that other side there, it'll heal perfectly. The grass will. Yeah, Old Paint 71 says Hammacher Schlemmer is metal detecting sandals for $60. So, Jason, that's the recommended small hand shovel. There's other companies that make them, but the Lesch is it's almost like Kleenex. Everyone in the industry knows about Lesch. Daniel Kester says they would show up as very dense iron. Oh, they would actually show up as in a lot of places. A lot of detectors have got readings on them for hot rocks, which are so highly mineralized that they cause other problems. And so I suspect that to be the case. But I know guys who would know that something hit over here. They look in that area. The problem is how deep do they go? Because sometimes they go deep. Bob Blah Blah says that looks like a garden trowel to me. No, it's actually it's close, and you can actually use a small garden shovel as well. But the problem with the typical garden shovel you get like Ace Hardware is you lean on it hard one time, you snap it in half. You cannot break that tool. That tool is indestructible. So, Mimi's Treasure Cottage. Hello, Steve and everyone. I love your channel. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Tyler Durden, you found a metal detector with your metal detector. Would that be irony? Like a photograph of a photograph. No, I haven't, but I've detected with other people. You got to be careful about keeping the detectors apart from each other because they do cause a weird feedback loop when you do that. Fatty Butterpants once stepped on a pop top, blew out a flip flop. Chuck Whitehead, what's the oddest thing you have found? Um, real junky stuff I don't keep, but I found really old crotal bell, the bell you'd hang on a cow or a horse or an animal you didn't want to wander off, you want to be able to hear it. I found one of those that was really old. I found some cool jewelry. Um, Nothing really strange. I found some interesting old toys, but they were not good shape. I once found like a Roy Rogers toy 6 shooter in a park that was kind of deep, and I suspect it was dropped back when it was still considered a new thing. Kids knew who Roy Rogers was. Um, I mean, if you want to go off uniqueness, I found a lot of coins that are unusual in the sense that, like, I found a 2 cent piece, an American 2 cent piece, very very unusual. I found a seated half dime 1837 silver 5 cent piece, very very strange. Yeah, Cyberdoc points out that could be cowbell. In which case, we always need more cowbell. We can never have enough cowbell. NS Geek, you can start an argument with this one. Says, what's ironic is Alanis Morissette singing a song about irony, and all the things she mentioned in the song weren't ironic until you look in a dictionary and realize that she's actually correct. Irony has two meanings. One is the meaning you're thinking of, as one is the meaning she's using. And so it's not the usual first sense of irony, but it is the second. So, but I know that most people don't check dictionaries for things like that. Steve found a 1964 dime in a Coinstar this week, which of course is a silver dime. If in fact that's a Roosevelt, that's pretty cool because that's worth some money. It's worth more than 10 cents. Jerry C always loved the type coinage. I've got a bunch of, like, I've only found one V nickel with my detector. I've also only found one shield nickel, but I found a shield nickel with my detector. Jason Brindamauer lost his full metal Tonka trucks in his best friend's garage fire. You think they'd have insurance to cover that? Tonka trucks. Oh. Tim Nossimo, metal detector work submerged in a fast river. Most metal detectors, like the one I've got, are submersible up to the box, meaning that if you look at the detector, there's a control box up here with a screen on it. And then there's a jack that goes into the back of that, which unplugs and plugs back in. And then from that point down, it's perfectly waterproof. So you can hunt underwater as long as you don't drop it. Don't drop it, which is why I don't hunt near water. Blah, blah, blah. You never go canoeing again. I will one of these days. I was just thinking about that earlier today. I really need to get it back out this summer. I was too busy last summer. I'll try to get it out this summer. John Michael Karma says it's funny how Coinstar machines reject real money because it's silver. And also, I've heard of people finding the steel pennies at a Coinstar, and also Canadian money, which just fell through, and people didn't bother to take it back. Coinstar won't take it. I don't want it. So, Johnny Z. Fradley, any Nickelback CDs? Do I own any? No. DePaul, ever find any 3 centers? Interestingly, we had 3 cent coins that were silver and 3 cent coins that were like nickels. And they're both very, very unusual. The 3 cent silvers are tiny. They're tiny, but I've never found either. So, no. Boomer, wasn't the shield nickel made of steel during World War II? No, you're thinking of the silver nickels, the war nickels. For a few years during World War II, if you flip a nickel over and it's an unusual color, and the mint mark is above the building and not on the bottom right, that's a war nickel, and it's got more silver content because nickel was so valuable that they were cutting back on the nickel consumption, and they're worth more money as a result of that. A shield nickel was a really plain nickel that came out back in the 1800s just for a few years. Richard Vernado, what was the largest item you ever found with your metal detector? The largest worthwhile item was a silver seated half dollar. I've found a lot of like crushed beer cans, but nothing much bigger than that. I don't think so. Sean M. Ever detected for Civil War stuff? No, I have not. Never had the opportunity. Jason Brindamauer was watching my live show last week on a kayak on the Huron River. Beautiful day. Just don't drop your phone in the water, please. Lewis Browning says the Nocta Legend is waterproof. Entirely? Like you drop it in the water, won't hurt it? Or is it waterproof up to the box? But yeah, either way, you can almost always detect in water so long as it's not way too deep. Tim Nossum, music connoisseur like you, doesn't have Nickelback? Yeah, no, Nickelback, there's a whole thing about Nickelback. I hate to criticize music, I really do, because if it appeals to somebody, it has value. Alethea loves using the coin stars. I haven't used them in a while, but I do have some buckets filled with change. Yeah, Johnny Z says it's a 42, 3, 4, and 5 nickels, which are 35% silver. Richard Vernado, what locations yield the most finds? Fairgrounds are good if you can get there. Carnival grounds are good also. But believe it or not, you can also find a lot of stuff at construction scrapes. Like let's suppose that you're driving down the road and you see a piece of property in a town that's been there in the town for a while, and they scrape it, and they're going to build something there. If you get permission to hunt there, there might be stuff that's been there for a long, long time. I did that at a scrape in Pontiac, where right now there's a dollar store. Like a dollar store is on top of it. But when they scraped it, I talked to the guy who was scraping. He goes, "Yeah, go right ahead." And I found 3 large pennies along with some other stuff. Large cents for the people who like to argue with me about that. But they were all from the 1810s, 1820s. I also found elsewhere in the lot a barber dime, a mercury dime, a bunch of wheat leaf pennies, a bunch of wheat pennies, and so on. But the large cents were amazing because there's such an unusual find here. So Zafar says, "What about your belt buckle? What about it?" I did find a belt buckle, but it wasn't the largest thing I ever found. Or did I miss a question? Oh, somebody asked about hunting for Civil War stuff. Well, I wasn't hunting for that. I just happened to find it. I found that at a sidewalk tear out in Michigan, which is not a Civil War site. Oh boy. Cyberdoc, is metal detecting equipment more expensive than sport fisherman's gear? Probably not, because most metal detectorists I know buy a detector, a pinpointer, a shovel, probably gloves, and that's it. And the batteries are rechargeable. So, that's an investment up front. I know a lot of people who fish buy a lot of lures, a lot of other equipment, depth finders and fish finders and boats. So, blah, blah, blah. Wouldn't losing a nickel in 1850 be the same as dropping a $100 bill today? I'd go out and look for it. Probably not quite that bad, but the problem is they're just as easy to lose back then. Think about dropping a large cent, though. A large cent is like this big. You'd hear it hit the ground. I mean, come on. Steve, didn't you say a fellow metal detectorist told you you're wasting your time here? You already found. Yeah, no, I mean, people think I'm making this story up. I could call the guy. The guy, I know the guy. I could call him up right now. Go, do you remember this? And you go, yeah, I remember that. There was a park in a town where I used to, whenever I got bored, I just go because it's near where I lived, and I kept finding stuff there. And so one day I'm there, and I'm there's an area I was beating to death because I kept finding stuff there. And I'm zooming along, and all of a sudden I see a guy walking towards me. I go, "Hey, how's it going?" He goes, "Good." He goes, "You're not going to find anything here." And I go, "Okay." And I just keep going. He goes, "No, I'm serious." And I thought the guy's trying to chase me off, you know? I go, "Why do you say that?" And he goes, "Me and my friends have all got detectors." He goes, "I've got a," and at the time I had what's called a DFX. He goes, "I've got a DFX just like yours. We have beaten this to death. There's nothing left in this park." I go, "Really?" I go, "I've been here many times before." And he goes, "I know, I see you here all the time." I go, "Why do you think I could keep coming back?" And he goes, "You're not finding anything, are you?" And while we were talking, I had a signal. And I go, "What do you think this is?" And I showed him the screen because he goes, "I have a DFX." I go, "What is that?" And he goes, "Oh my God, that's a silver dime." I go, "Yes, it is." I go, "I bet it's a mercury. It's 6 inches down. 6 inches down, boom, a mercury dime." The guy was swearing up a blue streak, but at himself. Dude, nothing is ever completely cleaned out. So Sig 226 says you might even notice the weight loss of a large coin. I've found silver dollars, okay? Modern and old. I know people have found I'm sorry. I've never found an old silver dollar. I've got friends who found the old silver dollars, but I've also found modern ones. And also half dollars. And take a silver half dollar and put it in the grass and walk away from it. See how far away from it you can see it. How does somebody drop a half dollar in the grass and nobody just picks it up? Like what? But it happens. It happens. Yeah, Vinny Northwest points out that if you have Amazon credit, Coinstar won't take anything. And I know there's a couple other ways they'll do that also, because I know people complain about losing a percentage to Coinstar. I'm also like, hey, if I've got a bucket of dirty pennies from metal detecting, I dump them into Coinstar and they take them, I don't mind them charging me a little bit for that. So Art S is something that would only be completely cleaned out if you used a fine sifter. And here's the other thing that really confuses people is that old metal detectors couldn't tell you what was in the ground or how deep it was. And then they gradually got better, got better, got better. But people who went detecting back in the early 70s found all kinds of, I mean, because I did. I found so much silver back then, but it was, early 60s Roosevelt dimes and stuff, And so the better detectors that are put out now go deeper and also are better at discriminating. And I've been places that are cleaned out, and I'm going along, and all of a sudden I start getting weird signals like there's a bunch of things in the ground. And because I know that the area is good, I go, okay, I'm gonna do an experiment here. And I use the pinpointer because the pinpointer doesn't discriminate. And I find the shallowest target and I remove it. Take the target out and remove it. It's like a rusty nail. Now I re-sweep the area. Oh, something else over here. Pinpoint, dig it out. Bottle cap. Take that and remove it. Now re-sweep, and I get a clean signal on a coin. And what happened, and I've documented this before. I once was detecting that same park I'm talking about now. And there was a cement pad that had a picnic table on it. And I'd gone around this table a million times because it's dead center in the middle of the area I liked. I'd pay money if you said, Steve, I'll flip the cement pad up for you. I'd pay someone $100 so I could detect underneath that cement pad. But anyways, and I'm going along and I'm sweeping, and I've got a head on the detector that's really narrow, so I can sweep and get a really, really specific reading on a target. And in the other direction, and I can narrow it down like pinpoint. And so I'm sweeping near the cement one way, I get no reading, and I sweep the other way, I'm getting a reading. And I realize that the reading is like, here's the edge of the cement. This is cement. And there's a target right down here. But the target is jumping all over the place. So I dig, because it says it's a half inch down. I dig a half inch down and I pull out a bottle cap, a crushed bottle cap. I put it on the picnic table. I then re-sweep the hole. And now I get a weird signal that's jumping back and forth. And I pinpoint, it goes 3 inches down. I go 3 inches down and I find a memorial penny. I pull it out of the ground, re-sweep the hole, and I find an Indian head penny 6 inches down. There were 3 targets like this, more like this, directly above each other. And so when you swept it this way and you got the reading, the detector was going bah, bah, and it was basically throwing you information for 3 targets. And so until somebody does the work to actually clean the park out, there's still stuff out there. Because what happens, I'm going to make this really quick, is a detector, when it goes over a good target, gives you a good signal. When it goes over a garbage target, it gives you a bad signal. If it goes over both at the same time, it gives you both signals. And you gotta be able to hear that and understand, oh, wait a second. There might be something in there. And I've found so many mixed signal targets where I was digging a hole once and I knew there's something in there. And I got in there, I popped the thing out, and all of a sudden a chain fell down. And it was a necklace, somebody's necklace. And the clasp had broken on it and fallen on the ground. I pulled that out of the hole, reswept the hole, Indian head penny. But because those two things were near each other and different kinds of metal, caused the detector to go all over the place. So Kelly Kincaid, someone went to a lot of trouble to set up those 3 targets like that. No, it's funny because it's such randomness. And I mean, the things people find, and you hear these stories, and when metal detectors get together and swap these stories, it's funny because I mean, I know guys who found coin spills. I mean, I've found a coin spill before where somebody sat on the grass at a school, and all the money fell out of their pocket, and it was like 35 or 40 cents, but most of it pennies, nickels. And the detector just goes like a huge noise, and you start pulling coins out. But it was all modern stuff, right? I was detecting with a guy in Ohio a couple years ago, and he found a coin spill of large cents, 4 of them, right near each other out in the woods. So, like some lumberjack had 4 cents in his pocket, and he sat down, and the coins fell out of his pocket. He got up and he walked away. And 100 years later, somebody else came by and found him. So it's crazy. DMS KMC says metal detecting is a lot like dating with all the mixed signals. Jason Brindamar, can I legally detect and dig under the water along the Au I'm not sure if the state of Michigan has any special restrictions on any of the waterways in Michigan. I know the Au is a beautiful river. I got friends who got a place on it. But I'm not sure if they care or not. I don't know. I'm curious. Code Elathea and Code Meter Peace. Pennies from heaven. Dan Boyd says someone, I believe, here a few weeks ago mentioned being able to hear an all silver quarter. That was me. I mentioned that somebody gave me my change at a bagel shop, and one of the quarters hit the counter and sounded funny. I looked at it, it was silver. Yeah, they do sound different. They ring differently if you listen to the sound they make, especially on a very hard surface. Matthias says here in Germany, some people use metal detectors to find ammunition from the Second World War. I talked to a guy years ago, and I lost his contact information. I feel bad about it. But he told me he had a White's DFX like I did at the time, and he would go detecting World War II battlefields. And the stuff they would find, everything from metals or stuff off of clothing, buttons and buckles and so on, to ammunition from an MG42. So when a gun is firing over 1,000 rounds a minute, it's putting a lot of scrap out there in the field that apparently, if you are detecting someplace, you got to dig a lot of those. And he said to me, he goes, those are like the bottle caps you talk about, where we go some places and they're everywhere. But you got to dig them to get them out of the ground to find out what else might be there. Art asks, you read about the guy that found 800 gold coins in Kentucky? I'm pretty sure I have, because I know there's a famous Kentucky hoard. Guy was out walking his farm field and he found these coins. And later on, I think they put him up for sale. And he did give an interview to a news station. I think they kept his identification anonymous because he didn't want people tearing up his field. But you hear about that from time to time where somebody just clearly buried something and then just left it there, or they died, never came back for it, or whatever. So, Steve, have you seen the people who will dredge a river bottom with high-powered magnets? Yes, magnet fishing. I've actually got a magnet, but I've not used it magnet fishing. One of my viewers sent it in here, and I've got it. I used it to pick up nails around my house when I got a new roof. that was fun. '03 Youngin, got any stories from Pontiac, Michigan? Well, the story I told earlier about the 3 large stunts, that's Pontiac, Michigan. But haven't done a lot of hunting in Pontiac, Michigan. There's a few parks there, but nothing much. But I used to drive through it on my way into work quite a bit, or coming home from work. Matthias says in Berlin, using magnets for metal fishing is not allowed. Probably because a lot of the stuff you might pull up might be dangerous. I mean, I've seen stories where they're, I mean, I watch Mark Felton on YouTube, does war stories, and his Mark Felton Productions. And I mean, they find explosives to this day where something fell out of an airplane and hit but didn't go off. And they find it now. And they're like, yeah, we really can't do much with it other than explode it and hope it doesn't cause too much more damage. So, for the two, this is historic sites commonly outlaw metal detection. Yeah, like for instance, national parks. National parks are big on that, and I don't blame them. And some state parks do. And some state parks will say that you can detect on, like, for instance, a sandy beach, but you can't detect on the grass, things like that. And quite frankly, I don't blame them either, because it only takes one idiot to ruin it for everybody. There was one more story about Pontiac. Speaking of Pontiac, there was a place up in Pontiac where there was an area that was being prepared for demolition, and I got permission from a guy who knew the management to go in there and detect, and other people did also. And other people were intentionally not filling in their holes because they wanted to cover more ground. And you could see where they detected, because it'd be a hole with just a plug popped out and a hole, plug popped out and a hole. Didn't fill in any of their holes. Just hundreds of them. It looked like a Verdun. It looked like a World War I artillery target practice area. And I don't know why people, I mean, stand up and kick the dirt in the hole. It doesn't take that much work. Caleb, will you ever bring back the whiteboard? I still have the whiteboard, although my magic markers have probably gone bad. The problem with a whiteboard is it messes up the exposure on the camera. And I also don't use it. There's not many topics I could use it for. I might one of these days. Action clips is my uncle found a tooth with a gold filling on a beach in San Diego. I have no idea how it got. Did he find it with a detector though? But yeah, there's probably some value there. John Michael Karma says that gold tooth might be his. Matthias says in Berlin, a small street suddenly vanished. Anti-tank mines from World War II were buried and exploded 40 years later. Oh my gosh, that's not good. Steve says, so metal detecting is like golf, you have to fill your divots. Yes. For the two says, look up what night hawking means. And night hawking is a reference to guys who go detecting where they shouldn't, and they do it at night so they won't get caught, hoping they won't get caught. And of course, they're usually trying to be fast and not necessarily so clean. And they're often trespassing where they shouldn't be, and they are ruining it for everybody. So, sometimes I listen to myself. So I was a munitions inspector in the Air Force. And then he says, don't forget about the Bugs Bunny cartoon where he's a bomb inspector. He'd hit the bomb with a hammer. Clunk. And if it didn't go off, you'd write dud on it. And, little kids, even little kids figured very quickly what was wrong with that. So, David Hastings says, fill in the holes and take the trash. Yeah, and so if you dig up a bottle cap or a pull tab or a rusty nail or something like that, take it with you and throw it away, and you're actually doing a service. And I mean, I've picked up more trash. And, I used to joke about hunting at Belle Isle in Detroit, which I don't think you can do anymore because now that's a state park. But I mean, I detected out there a lot. There were areas where you would literally get 20 or 30 screw top readings before you hit a coin. But if they weren't on the surface, you'd have to dig them to make sure. And I found a couple nice coins out there. I found a Barber dime with an O mint mark from New Orleans out there. And I found a bunch of other cool stuff out there, but dug a lot of garbage. But on my way out, I throw it in the garbage can. Mark Miller, as a former professor, were you ever impressed with a student? Did you ever have a prodigy? I had a couple. And I've mentioned this before that if you're in Michigan and you see any of the Jeffrey Feiger Law commercials on television, the attorney you'll see on that who says, all we do is win, is a former student of mine. And he was one, and there was one other exceptionally bright student I had that come to mind when I'm asked this question. But I had several. I had another one who went off and clerked for a federal judge. Now he's a partner at a big law firm. So a bunch became quite successful. But in particular, those two, over 10 years, you said, quick name one or name two. Those would be the two. Robert Torrey's got to go because his wife is in the yard finding more work for him. Good day to all. Oh, I am a really long name, says the only kind of interesting thing I have found with a borrowed metal detector is a diamond ring. I've had people ask me, can I borrow your metal detector? And I say no. Two reasons. One is it's expensive, and if you drop it, you're going to owe me a lot of money. But number two, if you need to borrow it, I'll come with you and show me what you're looking for. But you probably couldn't learn to use it in an afternoon because of how complicated it is. I have found lost jewelry for people who said, I lost something. Can you come find it? And I had, in fact, I took photographs of it, although they're not handy. I had a woman lose, I believe it was a combination of wedding engagement, but it was a gold ring with stones, which I think were diamonds. She was raking leaves. She took off her glove and went flying. And her and her husband couldn't find it for the life of them. So she mentioned it to her friend, who mentioned it to her friend, who told me. And I said, I'd be happy. And I drove down there with my DFX, and I pulled it out of the car, and the woman goes, we don't think you can find it. And I go, what makes you think that? She goes, we've been looking for hours. I said, where were you standing? She goes, over there. And I go, no. Show me where you're standing. So she goes over and she literally stops in the spot. And she goes, this is where I was standing. I go, exactly right there. And she goes, yes. I go, okay. Which way were you facing? She goes, oh, like this. And she turns. I go, okay. The ring was on your left hand, yes? She goes, yes. You took your glove off and went flying, right? She goes, yes. I go, don't move. Took the detector, fired it up, ground balanced it, sweep, boom, found it. 20 seconds, maybe? 15 seconds? And what had happened is when she took her glove off, the ring fell, and it fell with the diamond heavy side down and was like vertical like this. Now, she's lucky she didn't step on it, because if she'd stepped on it, she would have crushed it. But the point is, I go, is this it? She's like, huh! And they were searching all over the place. And the thing about it is that I know what happened. She panicked. When it went flying, she panicked. But the point is that she looked, and so she started like going out in bigger and bigger circles. And I had another friend of mine down the street from the house I grew up in with my old metal detector from back in 1978 or 79. 78. I remember the year. And she was the mother of one of my best friends. And she called me and said, hey, Steve, do you still have a metal detector? And I go, yeah. Why? And she goes, I lost a ring gardening. I said, okay, I'll be right down. Go down the street, walk up, and she had a raised garden between the house and the driveway. And she goes, I was wearing a ring. I don't know when or where, but she goes, I know I had it when I came out here. Went inside, it was gone. I'm pretty sure. I go, where were you working? She was right here. I'm detecting nothing. I go, you sure? And she goes, yes. I go, okay, hang on. I step on the driveway and start going up and down the side because there was ivy growing on the rocks. Beep. It was in there. And so I don't know if she took off a glove or if she dropped it climbing into the garden, but it was hanging in the plants on the side because there was rocks that built up, or like pavers kind of thing that built up the side of that. And so I found that also. And there you go. There you go. So that's always fun though. Jason Brindam, our friend, dropped his waterproof phone into the Huron with us, texting and kayaking. We were calling the fish all night till his battery died. That is so sad. That is so sad. I do have a canoe, and when I go canoeing, I wear a life vest, but I also have a fanny pack, which I don't wear in real life. The only time I wear it is when I'm canoeing, because I take my cell phone and put it inside a Ziploc bag, roll it over, stick it in the fanny pack, zip it shut, and put it in there. And so if I have to make a phone call, I will pull it out, very carefully use it while I'm sitting in the canoe, not moving. But of course, if the canoe flipped over, I'd be in trouble. So, the I am long name says I use the metal detector with supervision of the owner. Okay. But like I said, because the problem, the modern metal detectors, if I told you, you take the detector and you press the on button, okay, it's on. Now it'll return to the last setting I had it on, so that's okay. But you have to ground balance it. Is you have to uh, press and hold two things, and you pick the coil up and down three times, put it back down on the ground, and then you have to release the two buttons, but in the opposite order in which you press them. And now you start sweeping, but it's going to start making all kinds of noise. And unless you know what you're listening for, it would be useless. It would be like listening to gibberish, like listening to like a record backwards or something. You go, huh? Oh, Codemeister Beats is the divers on YouTube routinely recover phones and GoPro cameras. Oh, heck yeah. I'm sure they do. Yeah, GoPro cameras in particular. How much do you trust that suction cup? As many of you know, I had a GoPro camera go flying off my Viper a while back, and got some really cool footage of the tumble. But I went back and I got it, and the funny thing is, right there was an edge on the road that went down, and if it had gone just a little further, I wouldn't have found it, but I did find it. News Hodgepodge says just put a pop socket on your phone and tether it to you. Yeah, you can do that. What I do in my case, I'm literally doing that. I'm putting it in the baggie in the Ziploc and all that because it's I want to make sure it's waterproof. MH08 was a common arrangement. A lot of people go up. I know people who walk up to a house and go, "Can I detect?" And they go, "Yeah," and they just keep what they find. And I've always been a little. I've never done that myself because I've always thought that the landowner should get something, but you never know. Sarah C heard the plop of her phone falling out of her pocket into the lake a few years ago. Did you ever see it again, or was that it? Gone? Because you understand, if your phone falls into a lake and the lake is more than like 20 feet deep, you have that split second in your head where you're thinking to yourself, I've got like 3 seconds where I could dive in right now and possibly grab that phone. But that window is disappearing very, very quickly. For the two says he remembers seeing the YouTube. I'm sorry. I remember there was a YouTube who used rockets, found less spinning to make a better video. Okay. Somebody else said they saw the video of the spinning camera, but Guts Cold Revenge checking in from New Zealand. Hello. I'm glad to hear from you, my friend. Thank you for checking in. New Zealand, the place on earth I probably love the most that I've never been to. I got friends down there. Johnny Z had a phone fall in the toilet. Now, I know people who have dropped their phone in a toilet, and I always tell myself, you understand, you've got the phone in your hand. There is a toilet. You should, in your mind, go, okay, these two things should not get together, right? Alethea dropped her friend dropped a whole purse into a lake. Did it float or did it sink? Because the floating might help you, right? It's not me. Oh, seven says unless it's Lake Tahoe, most lakes you can't see the bottom. Well, that's what I'm saying is that your only chances are if you jumped in and grabbed it as it was sinking, right? That's the thought process. I've never tried it, so I don't know if it works. But I'm saying is when you drop the phone, your first thought is should I go in after it? But the longer you consider that, the less likely it becomes. Cyberdox has never put your phone in the hoodie kangaroo pouch. Sounds like words of wisdom from somebody who knows, right? Oh, Sarah C was so close to shore, not that deep, maybe 6 feet, but rang for hours, was never seen again. It was like 40 degrees out. Definitely not diving in. Codemeister Beats, I've dropped landline cordless phones in the toilet several times. Several times. Hey, why am I not? You guys have been dropping the ball. Why am I not drinking my water over here? Alethea says that purse just sunk immediately. What does she keep in there? Lead weights? I suppose it depends on what kind of purse it is. Joe Hayes checking in and cleaning the kitchen. Thanks for being here on a Sunday afternoon. Thank you. The prodigal stranger says never bring your phone into a restroom. It's disgusting. You'll get an infection. Well, I mean, I routinely, if I run into a gas station or something, but I usually have my phone on a clip or in my pocket, but you know. Unks as a magnet would grab the phone if you could immediately mark the spot, approximately. Of course, the question is, would the magnet harm the phone? Although I guess it beats losing the phone entirely, right? Or asks a question we're all thinking, wait, you dropped the same landline phone in the same toilet several times? Tom says, I've seen videos of dolphins retrieving cell phones. Now, that's the opposite of the monkeys that snatch sunglasses. Have you seen that? Oh, boy. Jason Brinemar says, if men actually carried purses, they'd be full of guy stuff, heavy as crap, and have wrenches and so on, would sink quickly. That's a torque wrench. Oh. Angels don't fall says magnet will not harm the phone. Really? You're telling me if I take an industrial magnet, like I'm going to go magnet fishing and put my phone up against it, that's not going to harm it? I would thought it would screw up the electronics or something. I'm not going to test it though. Angels don't fall. I was thinking of angels don't cry. Well, DePaul reminds us when Jerry Seinfeld knocks his girlfriend's toothbrush into the toilet. Never occurred to him to just go buy another toothbrush. Dustin Carpenter, Merce. Yeah. It's not a purse. It's European. Canadian Robot Lady is in the house. By the way, I've been watching old episodes of The Simpsons in order. I'm at season 5 right now, so It's like a tune-up. It's just getting me back, getting me back in a line with all the knowledge I should have. Matthias says in a zoo, monkeys would steal your phone and exchange it for fruit. Well, there's also monkeys. I don't know, India, someplace over there, where they'll grab your sunglasses or your purse and try to blackmail you with it. And these are monkeys that are on the street. G. Keyman says they make magnet mounts to hold cell phones. But I'm talking about an industrial magnet. I'm just assuming that there's something slightly different about that. Fatty Butterpants says big boys don't cry. And that's a different song than Boys Don't Cry. Uh, DePaul says, and then he bought her an electric toothbrush. Yeah, but I think there was a lot of consternation before that, right? Jason's favorite song, Willie Nelson, Angel Flying Too Close to the Ground. Live version makes my hair stand up. That is one of my favorite songs also. I love Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson is one of those guys. You really can't pigeonhole, you can't just say, well, here's what he does. No, he's done all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. Poncho and Lefty. I like his version of that with Merle Haggard. Yeah, I know you didn't write that song, but Canadian Robot Lady just says she was a little bit busy, but the chat was top of her mind. Ella Thea says that the friend of hers who dropped her purse into the lake is a mechanic. Sig226, I want to be a cowboy. Bye, Boys Don't Cry. But I don't want to be a pirate. Johnny Z, does that include the shorts of the Tracy Ullman show? No. And I know I've had several people say that to me, and I understand that they had those shorts, but those shorts aren't canonical. You never hear people quoting the shorts from the early days. In fact, The Simpsons really didn't hit its stride till about season 4. I mean, it didn't peak, but I'm saying it started looking like modern Simpsons around 4 or 5. And then modern, I 25 and beyond to me is just it's gotten too self-referential, a bunch of other stuff, but there you go. Jay Klein dropped a TV remote into the dog's water bowl. What would be bad is if your dog drank it and you had to somehow squeeze the dog to change the channels. Steve says all the shorts were basically Homer choking Bart. Jason and a couple other people have now suggested it's possible that a strong magnet could interrupt the motion detection inside the phone due to how it's made. That's possible too. JW, hey Steve, my local government blocked my number from calling several public government phone numbers. Is that a thing that can be done in general? Wow. That seems odd to me. I don't know if it's ever been litigated. The question is, are there any statutes on the books? I don't know what state you're in, but are there any statutes in the books that say that they've got to make those numbers available to everybody? If so, there might be a problem. And likewise, you might be able to make the argument that as a tax-paying citizen, you've got the right to those services, unless, of course, they were to make the argument and say, well, but somebody is just and I'm just making stuff up here. But if I set an auto dialer to call 911 just over and over and over and over and over and over again, obviously they can make me stop. Right? So there has to be something in there, and I just don't know what that threshold would be. But I would think that if that's a problem and they had no right to do that, you should be able to do something about it. But it depends, I'm sure, on what state you're in. Tim Nossum, thank you for a great live as always, Steve. Well, thank you, my friend, for being here. Without you guys, this show would be me talking to myself. Tom, wouldn't the magnet erase the memory card if it had one? See, that's what I was assuming that there's something in there that was using some kind of memory that would be the kind of thing that would get degaussed with a big magnet. I'm talking about a big magnet. I'm talking about the magnet you use to go magnet fishing. Okay, they could pick up like a 50-pound weight. To put your phone up against that on both sides, I'd be leery about that. Stop spam. And I remember when The Simpsons was in the same time slot as The Cosby Show. Everyone was saying that would be the end of The Simpsons. Oh, it seems so long ago, doesn't it? I'm just drinking water, by the way. I just realized that the pouring is off camera, but I mean, does anybody want to volunteer? Let's get a smartphone. I got a magnet. I ain't doing it with my phone. I know that. Oh boy. Code Mr. Beat says all the data is solid state. Tim Nosson says I haven't heard degaussed. No, that's from the old radio, my old radio days. You go into the recording studio and you're recording stuff in the old days using cartridges. You have to degauss the cart or a reel to reel of tape. Like I said, the old days. Hey, Madame Lestrange, and I always thought it could have been Dr. Melestrange. Give this madam a 50th birthday shout out. Thank you. Happy birthday. Someone else's 60th birthday is tomorrow that checked in earlier. So I guess it happens to a lot of people. Jay Klein says magnets will erase hotel key cards. I don't know what will, but all I know is I've had more than one occasion where I've hiked all the way to my hotel room and the card doesn't work anymore. And I go back and they're like, oh, yeah, we'll just give you a new card. You know, so. Fatty Butterpants, I have to be degaussed monthly. By the way, that worst name for a magazine, Degaussed Monthly. Featuring things that have been degaussed lately. Old Paint 71, did the truck driver ever get a date? Not that I know of. Hasn't checked back in. So either he's so busy on that date he hasn't checked in, or he's moved on. I don't know. User 823-123-8384 says Carl Gauss, a prominent German mathematician, astronomer, and physicist. It can also be a unit of measurement, the Gauss, which measures magnetic induction or magnetic flux density as opposed to the flux capacitor. MHOH says my refrigerator is trolling my toaster again. We're just this far, from your Bluetooth appliances becoming self-aware. It's not me 07, so I used to have to degauss my monitor. Now, the interesting thing is, several people remind me of that modern monitors don't need that, but older ones apparently did, but I never had to do that. So, don't know. Lewis Browning says your birthday is really your Mother's and Father's Day. Well, interestingly, it's also just a day your mom was hospitalized. Around the time you were born. Angels don't fall. Don't forget to have your loved ones degoused. Friends don't let friends go out undegoused. Slur to Bartfast. My brother used to have a degausser for his cassette tapes. I remember degaussing cassette tapes when I could because I would if I had a cassette I wanted to over tape something over, I would take it in and degauss it in the studio because we had a degausser in there. Um, you flip it over, you flip it over to do the edges. But I just gotta also shout out the name Slur to Bartfast because of course it's a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. Believe in yourself says, remember, Alexa is always listening. I know that the Canadian robot lady did an outro one day where she said something either to Alexa or Siri. And a bunch of people complained because apparently I think she said like turn the lights off or something. Who'd have thought that would work? It's not me. Oh, 07 had one of those degauss machines in my old job for erasing hard drives. Wow. Solaris the Long Hauler. Hey guys, any HOA stories coming soon? I'm always looking for them. I'm also quite often I see so many that I'm looking for ones that are different or new or big or something. So there will be more, but it's just I also have to wait till they happen. Sometimes I listen to myself. Our classic rock stations playing the most modern music that they will play. There's an interesting angle to classic rock, oldies, and different terms like that. Because I remember when classic rock became a thing in the 80s. Okay. So there were album rock stations like in Detroit, WRIF, WLLZ, W4, WABX, and so on. And as those listeners grew older, many of them didn't care for the stuff that's being played in these stations. They wanted to hear the old stuff. We wanted to hear the Rolling Stones, and so they came up with this format called classic rock. So now a station that's been playing this music for 20 years can take the stuff from the first 10 years out of their playlist and it'll show up on the classic rock station. But as noted, that happened in the 1980s. And so oldies stations, like when I was a little kid, there was WHNE in Detroit, Honey Radio. And WHNE played oldies, and they played stuff from the 50s, doo-wop groups and stuff. Daddy's Home, Shep and the Limelights. Great song. Perry Como, Catch a Falling Star and Put It in Your Pocket. And then as oldies stations got older, people realized, like, well, now there's stuff no one's playing anymore because it was from the 70s. And so oldies stations would start dropping off the stuff from the 50s and picking up the 60s and 70s. And I remember working, I've mentioned before, WKNX in Saginaw in 1983 or 84 and playing ELO's telephone line as an oldie and going, this is an oldie? And so there's always this problem at an oldies station. What's your oldest song? What's your newest song? And the same is for the classic rock stations. And I wouldn't be surprised now if they have to have these other interim things because there's like modern rock and then there's, well, is the modern rock stuff coming out right now? So Canadian Robot Lady says, how is it possible 90s rock is now classic rock? Because that came out after the classic rock stations first signed on. Tim Nossum, the first Korn record, is now older than 25 years. Oh, boy. Mark Miller heard Metallica on a classic rock station. Interestingly, I'm surprised they played on the radio at all, only because Metallica is one of those bands that they're huge, they're fantastic, but they also just got there by basically just touring their brains out. And Dan Boyd, the 70s wasn't that long ago. It's all a matter of relativity, my friend. And don't forget progressive rock stations. Of course, there's also the new rock type stations. And interestingly, like Sirius XM, they have a 60s channel. Then they have a 70s channel. And understand the 60s channel could play Going to the Chapel by the Dixie Cups and then Magic Carpet Ride by Steppenwolf back to back. They're both songs from the 60s. Do they belong next to each other? No. Do they both belong on the radio? One of them does. But, 70s channel, 80s channel. But I still think they do a decent job because they have some oddball channels or even like First Wave, which is largely a specific era. And there's some calls they make I don't completely agree with, but I'm like, but it's close enough. And so you can button punch on Sirius and get to pretty much hear songs you like. Dustin Carpenter, jazz swing stations. And of course, easy listening. Yeah, no, there were big band stations. There was the beautiful music stuff, WJOI Detroit, and some of the stations, but even classical stations playing classical music. A lot of markets haven't got that anymore. There's WJZZ in Detroit playing jazz. I'm not sure they've been around for a long time, and radio has gone through all kinds of upheaval. But the funny thing is, there would be a thing that would happen in radio, like a fad. And I remember when a station came to Detroit, it's like The Wave. And The Wave played like, it was like white noise and stuff. It's like, it was like half background noise and half like quasi music. I'm not even sure. And it changed formats like 3 minutes later. So, Madam Lestrange, Alice Cooper on the grocery store music. I swear to God, I heard Thomas Dolby's one of our submarines being played in the overhead speakers at a mall store. An actual song, actual version by him. But I've heard music versions of other great songs. Oh my gosh, can you remember, lady? Henry Mancini, Baby Elephant Walk. That was Henry rocking it up, man. Oh, somebody else mentioned they liked ELO. I love ELO. Absolutely love ELO. Had a long discussion about that with a friend of mine just recently. Sometimes I listen to myself, so 30 years from now, nursing homes will be playing Metallica. We can only hope. Or in Germany, they'll be playing Rammstein. For my German audience. Blah, 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 music. Yeah, DePaul says 60s on 6 and classic vinyl on Sirius. Padre says it was Sloopy, not Snoopy. Are we talking about Hang On Sloopy? Because Rick Derringer passed away this past week, and I should have mentioned that somewhere. I don't think I did. Rick Derringer was a icon in music, despite the fact he was not that well known. People know who he is. He had the song "Rock and Roll Hoochie Cooch," one of the greatest guitar songs of all time, classic rock mainstay. But he was also in the band The Real McCoys with the song "Hang On Sloopy." But he did tons and tons of studio work. I believe he produced Weird Al Yankovic albums. So the guy's got some amazing stuff on his resume, and he just passed away. Very, very sad. But that would be Rick Derringer. Always loved this song, Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. Canadian Robot Lady, just a reminder to you in the chat, I'm working next weekend, so won't be in the house. Okay, I'm sorry. I was thinking you'd be working this weekend, but there you go. Thank you very much for checking. I appreciate that. Anytime you can be here. Steve, I remember about 20 years ago, top 40 station playing Pantera. I couldn't figure out why until I learned that one of their members had tragically died. I was up north in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan speaking about Douglas Houghton in Eagle River at the Eagle River Historical Society. I came outside, turned on my Sirius, and they were playing Michael Jackson. I forgot what channel. I hit another button, Michael Jackson. Third channel, Michael Jackson. I go, oh, Michael Jackson died. And he had. I mean, and I remember I went down to an Applebee's. I think it was an Applebee's restaurant in Houghton and watched the CNN scroll. And there's just nothing but wall-to-wall Michael Jackson coverage. And that type of stuff does happen. So there you go. Florida Bart Fast says we had a station years ago try to get the word out about their existence by playing Stairway to Heaven 24/7 for about 2 months. That would be the worst thing you could do. Playing that song once is generally more than it needs to be played. That song's been so overplayed. I've heard other stations doing weird stuff, often playing a song for a whole weekend or something. What's that song? I Got Friends in Low Places. When Wow FM decided to change formats. I forgot they changed formats going in or out of this, but they did that and they wound up becoming Young Country later on. But so Mark Miller, Lordy Mama, light my fuse. Marshall, good morning, Steve. Good morning, Marshall. Or Marshall Squared, I guess. Canadian Robot Lady, I try to be more of Robin Quivers to Steve's Howard. Daniel Kester, don't forget about the parody. Stairway to 7-Eleven. Padre, a Sirius channel, used to play Alice's Restaurant every Thanksgiving all day. All day? Yeah, there's a lot of radio stations in Detroit that do that. I know a lot of radio stations around the country do. It's one of those things. And I remember stations that actually say, okay, at 10 o'clock, we're going to play Alice's Restaurant. And then they'd play it. And like 15 minutes later, people are calling, like, can you play Alice's Restaurant? Okay, Dan Boyd says, I've seen The Clash and I've seen Weezer. When did you see The Clash? Because that would have been a great show. I love The Clash. Michelle says Robert Plant said in an interview with Dan Rather he doesn't like Stairway to Heaven. The sad thing is, it's a great song. It's just it got overplayed. It just got so overplayed. You can get sick of anything, you know. Georgiana Thornton says, in my teens, I answered the request line for Keys Radio in Corpus Christi, Texas, and loved it. I answered the request line, among other places, at WABX in Detroit, where every other call was, hi, can you play AC/DC Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap? Thank you. And then we'd play it, and a few minutes later, can you play Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap by AC/DC? We just played it. Can you play it again? Oh, and of course, it's Stairway to Gilligan's Island, as Daniel Kester points out. Well, it's past 3 o'clock. I mentioned earlier I was using my lawnmower this morning, and the belt jumped off the deck. I got to go out and figure out if I can fix that or not, like hurting myself. So I'll talk to you guys later. Of course, next Sunday, same time, same place. And as always, during the week on my main channel, Fridays on my backup channel, and the backup channel if anything else happens. That occasionally I put stuff up there. But otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.